Hi everyone, Ryan from Gray's Online Classic Cars and Bikes. We've probably all noticed the price of VL Commodore turbos in the last 6 to 12 months just skyrocket. They've been getting unbelievable prices. We just sold a yellow BT1 in one of our last auctions and it was over 70k. Unfortunately, a lot of the ones you see on the market have been modified. They've had different engines put in them, they've had bigger intercoolers put on them, they've suspension changed, seats changed, change of colour. It's not too often you find a dead original car. Now the one we've got here, this was a Queensland delivered car. It was sold by the Holden dealer in Townsville. It's a factory SL turbo manual. Now this one came with FE2 suspension. It also came with power steering, which a lot of the SLs didn't. This one's got power steering and it is correct in every way, right down to the factory hubcaps, the gear knob, the steering wheel, the stereo, the badges. This car is 100% correct as it was when it left the Holden dealership all those years ago. It does have the logbooks, it's got all the spare keys. And gee whiz, I'll tell you what, it's got to be the cleanest one I've ever seen in my life. And factory red, that is the original colour, hasn't been colour changed. But finding one of these in a manual, in red, in original condition and with power steering, it's like finding hen's teeth. It's super rare, you just don't see them come up, and especially one that hasn't been flogged and bent and biffed. I'll just give you a quick look underneath the bonnet of this car and I'll just show you how tidy it is. Like if you look underneath here, it's just as it left, as I said, as it left the factory. The tags that have been off it, all this front's all original, the original fan shroud and stickers. The airflow mixture's never been touched, it's still got the plug in there. All the original date-coded leads. Like the car is just an absolute time warp. And these things are a super great car to drive. I remember buying one of these brand new in 1987. I bought a manual Bonnet turbo. And I couldn't believe what a great car it was. What a big step up from the standard old 6-cylinder VK to the VL turbo. It was just huge, it was chalk and cheese. And like everyone else, when they first talked about putting a Nissan engine in a Commodore, I had a heart attack. But once you drove one of these cars and just felt the performance, the economy and everything else, they were just miles and miles ahead of everything else on the market. But this is a great example, so why don't we jump in and take it for a drive. VL manual SL turbo. Listen to that, beautiful. And as I said before, this one's got factory power steering and air conditioning. So it's makes it a pretty rare car. Anyway, we'll take it for a squirt and see how it goes. You coming?
Oh, no, because I'll be in the shot anyway.
Oh, right.
So you just go.
You need to go for work. If anything else,
Just 1 second, yeah, I'll save it. Yes, it was sent to you, mate. I've just resent it to you.
And of course, these cars back in the 80s, they came with factory wind-up windows. You didn't get power windows unless you optioned them in the Bellina or the Calais came standard, but the Bellinas they certainly weren't. But just sitting in this car, it's like going back in time. Like the base trim is just as it was when it left the factory. The door trims and everything on the car are just like brand new. The steering wheel's not loose. As I said, factory radio still in it, radio cassette. It's got cold air conditioning. And all the gauges work. Like the car looks like it's 2-year-old. It's incredible car. This one's running the rear Venetians, interior Venetians. That's about the only rattle you can hear in the car. There's a little bit of a rattle from one of the Venetians. But I just cannot fathom where these cars are going to be priced wise in the next 15 years, 10 to 15 years. Like they're just jumping up all the time. And we're seeing big money for ones that have been heavily modified. I think a standard one in this sort of condition with logbooks, being the colour red, being a manual with air and power steering, it's got to be one for the collector. And I certainly think there would not be another one as original and as standard as this one in Australia. And just driving, like, it just turns in very, very nicely. There's no shudder through the suspension. Gearbox is nice. Some of the early turbo manuals, they did have a problem. They had a bit of a rattle and a bit of a death rattle in the gearbox when you were sitting idling. This one hasn't got it. The engine performs very, very nicely. Like, there's plenty of acceleration there. And as I said, the car's completely standard, so that's a good thing. It hasn't been messed around with. Hood lining's correct. The body's straight as a die. Even things like the body mouldings and all that are good. The badges are in exactly the right position they should be. They've still got the standard original exhausters with the tailpipe and muffler that slightly swings up on the turbo version rather than the standard 6 version. And you really just can't fault the car. So you're sitting at home, you're thinking you'd like to buy a car that's going to increase in value, but you can still take on a weekend drive. And it's not difficult to drive. These things got power assisted clutch. As I said, it's got air conditioning, power steering. And it's just a very, very good rare car. I don't think you could really go wrong on something like this. It is just that good. I really can't fault the car. And as I said, condition-wise, there's zero spend on this car. It's great. The old illuminate wipers up on the dash, rear demister. The fan works perfectly. The ashtray looks like it's never had a cigarette butt in it, thank goodness. And look, just a fantastic car. I love these early Holdens. And, well, they don't seem like an old car to me. I remember when these things were brand new, but it's a great example. Give us a call on 1300 Classic, or shoot us an email to grays.com.au or an email to classic@grays.com.au.